Hello and good afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Ruby DeLuna. Here's a roundup of today's top stories. It's Thursday, May 29th. Seattle's former chief of police, Adrian Diaz, is suing the city and Mayor Bruce Harrell for wrongful termination. Diaz says the firing ruined his career. Amy Radel has more.
Harrell dismissed Diaz for dishonesty last December after an investigation concluded that Diaz concealed his romantic relationship with a woman he hired. In his lawsuit, Diaz pushes back on those findings. He also claims the real reason he was terminated was refusing to follow the mayor's orders and fire police officers without due process. One of them was Daniel Otterer, whose comments about the death of a pedestrian killed by a police vehicle did eventually result in termination. On Diaz's firing, Mayor Bruce Harrell's spokesperson says, quote, "We are confident that the fact-finding allowed by the litigation process will demonstrate the truth." Amy Radel, KUOW News.
A top Democratic official in King County is facing calls for his resignation after his ex-fiancée filed a restraining order. Scott Greenstone has the story.
For a decade, John Arthur Wilson has been the county assessor who determines property values. He's now running for county executive. This month, Wilson's ex-fiancée Lee Keller filed a restraining order against him, the second in a year. Keller alleges Wilson won't stop contacting her and her family and has tracked her location in the past. She included screenshots where she texted, "Leave me alone," and Wilson responded, "Never." Wilson called the relationship stormy in an email to KUOW and insisted Keller would withdraw the restraining order. Keller said through her lawyer that's not true. The mayor of Seattle and 2 county council members are calling on Wilson to resign. Scott Greenstone, KUOW News.
The daughter of a woman who died in the Northwest's extreme heat wave of 2021 is suing big oil companies over her mother's death. John Ryan reports.
Juliana Leon was driving home to Ferndale on the hottest day in Seattle history. She managed to pull off I-5 and park in northeast Seattle, but was overcome by heat. Her body temperature hit 110 when she died, according to the lawsuit filed Thursday in King County Superior Court. The record-shattering heat wave killed about 1,200 people. Scientists concluded it was virtually impossible without human-caused climate change. Leon's daughter is suing 7 oil companies. Her wrongful death suit argues the companies knew for decades that their products endangered the climate, but they hid that truth from the public. Oil industry spokespeople did not immediately respond to interview requests. The suit seeks unspecified damages and a public education campaign to undo what it calls decades of misinformation. John Ryan, KUOW News.
A Washington nonprofit is getting a boost from the state to continue housing asylum seekers at a former hotel in Tacoma. Thrive International is set to receive $2 million to help it buy the building. More from KNKX reporter Freddie Monares.
Thrive International is currently housing about 350 people at the site. Mark Finney is the nonprofit's executive director. He says the $2 million from the state will go toward the campaign to buy and renovate the former Quality Inn Hotel on Tacoma's South End.
The goal, we're trying to raise about $10.7 million. Of that, $9.8 is the purchase price for the building, and then we have about another $900,000 worth of capital improvements that we want to make. You know, it needs a new roof and some things like that.
Finney says owning the building would save the nonprofit some money and allow it to modify the property, like building a playground for kids staying there. Since it opened its doors to asylum seekers in September, about 30 families have found permanent housing. In Seattle, I'm Freddie Monares.
Some salmon numbers in Washington have gotten better, but many are still struggling. That's according to a new report by the Salmon Recovery Office. Northwest Public Broadcasting's Courtney Flatt explains.
Of Washington's 14 salmon and steelhead populations listed under the Federal Endangered Species Act, 8 are edging closer to extinction. The report noted modest improvements of 4 of the listed species. The fish face lots of predators, pollution, and blocked habitat. According to the report, climate change is also a problem. Katie Knight Pruitt is with the Salmon Recovery Office. She says the state is working to help.
like habitat restoration, where we focus on let's remove obstacles in those waterways, put in the type of vegetation that's going to give the water some shading and help filter pollutants.
Pruitt says more funding is still needed. That's a growing problem with budget cuts and soaring construction costs. I'm Courtney Flatt.
Washington state agencies and workforce organizations are reaching out today to help federal workers who have lost their jobs. They're sponsoring the third in a series of statewide webinars. The agencies will share details about unemployment benefits, retraining programs, and healthcare options. Donna Mack is the Rapid Response Manager for Washington's Department of Employment Security. She says the first two events were well attended, and many people are trying to find clarity.
It's been a tricky population to serve for that very reason. They're laid off, they're not laid off. Their agency goes to court and they're rehired, or their union. And so it is a moving target to serve these federal workers.
Max says this will be the last webinar for federal workers, but going forward, people can still get help through the state. Finally today, a remembrance.
Well, I love an angel, but does she love me? Well, I'll never know, and I'll never be free.
The longtime Northwest bluesman known as Little Bill has died. He was 86 years old. Bill Englehart was known for his work with Little Bill and the Blue Notes, dating back to the 1950s. In 1959, they released Englehart's song, I Love an Angel. It's considered a prime example of the so-called original Northwest sound, heavy on the sax and piano with minimal guitar. The Tacoma News-Tribune reports that Englehart started playing guitar at age 6. He would play a packed schedule of local gigs for decades before retiring in 2020. A memorial is planned for July 13th.
I love this angel to my dying day.
Next time on Seattle Now, it's Casual Friday. We'll talk about the city's decision to increase police presence at beaches and parks this summer and put an earlier curfew in place at some beaches.
It's the peak of summer. Come on. We're in a loneliness epidemic. You're going to tell Seattle to get indoors?
And that's all for today from the KUOW newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst. I'm Ruby DeLuna. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See you later.